What's up, everybody? I was doing that
What's up?
earlier.
What's up? What you know about them Boston baked beans, though, bro?
Hey, so what you mean what I know about them? I grew up on the Boston baked beans,
Them
baby.
so popular.
Look, I used to eat them, lemon heads, and Alexander the Grape. I used to hit. This is when the ice cream truck would come around, and them.
Yep.
Shoot, them joints took me back. I had to sneeze off that joint.
Yo, I got a crazy ice cream truck story real quick, so check it. In my hood, what we used to do is, I mean, everybody probably and everywhere, but
Right.
my hood, we used to jump on the back of the ice cream truck, and we'll ride that joint for a few blocks to get to the homie's crib. You know what I mean? It's real quick, nice.
Right.
It's a fun ride. See all your peoples waving at everybody. So anyway, one time we was doing that, and I was probably like 9 or 10 years old. And this dude, the ice cream truck guy, was a silver ice cream truck, so it was a little bit more hood. It was like,
Was y'all's caged up? Did you have to cage the bars on it?
nah, it didn't have the cage.
Okay.
It didn't have the cage up jump, but it was just straight silver. It didn't have like this Mr. Softy like
Right.
logo on the side or nothing like that.
Right.
So anyway, we jump on the back, we riding. All of a sudden, my man slams on the brakes, and he jumps out yelling. You know, his language, whatever he was, I don't know where he was from, but so we start running. You know, we're booking. My man picks up a brick and threw it, fam. He started throwing bricks at us.
For
I'm like
real?
a 9, 10-year-old. Yeah, he hit me in the back of the leg.
Hold up, the ice cream truck dudes, the
Ice
driver?
cream truck, man.
Whoa.
Man. Yo, he hit me with a brick in the back of the leg. So, long story short, like the community got involved. It was a big deal. My man lost his ice cream truck because he was throwing bricks at us. Like, yo, it was a big deal.
Was he? What was his nationality?
I don't know. He was somewhere
Okay.
Middle East. Middle Eastern
Yeah,
somewhere,
I'm about to
you
say
know.
that was my first introduction to Middle Eastern people, bro.
Yeah,
Was
I
they
mean, you know,
like? I think this dude was Indian because he had that. Hello, welcome to an ice cream. We want to buy. What do you want to buy? He
this
had
dude
that
was
kind of
gangster.
vibe.
He understood. Like, he knew how to get down. He picked up a brick and was like, you stay off my money maker. Bang.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Whoa.
I got hit with a brick, bro.
In the back of the leg, fam.
Bro,
I've
did
been
you-
at
was you
war
crying?
from the gate. No, I
you-
didn't cry. I just
Yeah.
kept running. You know what I'm saying? Like, this dude, if this man's crazy enough to throw bricks at a kid, he's crazy enough to do
man.
something. I'm out. You know what I'm saying? Like, I was
Hey.
booking.
Hey man, we just be doing wild stuff as a kid, bro. Jumping on the
time.
back of the ice cream truck. That was stuff I used to do, but I was scheming like, man, how can we steal?
I mean, it was fun. We'd be
Yeah, it was
riding in
fun.
the back of that
Yeah.
joint. It's going like 20 miles an hour, 15, you know,
Right.
dipping.
We had a couple different drivers. So like we had one dude that was like, "Hey, welcome to ice cream. What do you want to drink?" You know, we had to do all. Then we had a couple of mean dudes like that every once in a while.
But they claim their areas, though. They
They
beat
do,
over
though.
their spots. And they
Yeah,
claim
well
them
said.
joints.
Yeah, they do. They ain't praying. Welcome to Ice Cream Adventures, ladies and gentlemen. This is Cross Examining. We're back to the grill again. The grill again. Back to the grill again. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Kirk Kennedy with your favorite co-host, Strack the Wolverine.
Hey, well, Mr. Softy ain't that soft. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Season 5, episode 10. That we got a potential banger for y'all, man. We about to get into
Can you say
the
that
crazy
word, banger?
episode.
Can you say
You
banger?
know what?
I don't
I'm
know.
not sure if I'm not even sure if you can say y'all anymore. Like we're
I think
I'm not even
y'all's
sure.
probably been out. Y'all's
That
been out.
probably is wild. We probably not allowed to say that no more. You know what I'm saying? But we get ready to get into it. But hey, you know what, man? Listen, we're a little bit behind the 8 ball on this. But we never talked about this. I'm curious. What did you think about Brittney Griner's release?
Oh.
Like we talked about that. So I was thinking, like, man, I'm curious. I realized I ain't asked you. What did you think? Not what you read? What did you think about Brittney Griner?
So I didn't read anything
release.
about it. I just know that the high stakes dude that they traded for that's a big deal. Like, I remember
Yeah.
watching the movie. You know,
The
what I'm
Lord of
saying?
War?
Lord, that was a crazy movie.
Yeah, they call the dude the Merchant of Death, fam. Like that's
Yeah.
you know, it's certain nicknames that you give yourself, and there's certain nicknames you're given, right? And then when they call you the Merchant of Death, fam,
Did you see the movie?
yeah, Lord of War,
Yeah,
yeah, I like that joint. I liked it.
I mean, he was hustling, fam. Like crazy weapons. Like that was
bro,
crazy.
This man was when you talk about arms dealer. This man was an octopus.
That's what
you
I'm
talk
saying.
about arms. This man was an octopus. with a-
I mean, we traded like my man for Brittney. It's just I don't know. Something don't seem right to me. You know what I'm
Right.
saying? Like, but hey, I'm glad she's home though. I mean, I don't know how glad she is to be back in America, but
Yeah.
I'm glad she's home. I'm glad she's
So
safe.
Yeah, I'm with you. Now, I mean, so speaking as a person who's been locked up before, right? Having my freedom taken, I can appreciate when anybody gets out of prison or gets out locked up. Like I know what that's like, and it is a terrible feeling to know that like you can't even just go to the store if you want to. You can't even, do something like just walk around if you want to, get some fresh air if you want to. You can't. So I know what that's like. And I thought, hey man, glad for her. But when you think about like the Marine, the guy, was it Corporal Felon, who's still PHELAN, who's in there because apparently, I didn't know this. I found this out actually like yesterday, that what they did was they offered America either this Marine who's been in there for 2 years under the suspicion of espionage, this Marine, or Brittney Griner. So it wasn't like it was, it was this guy who's a war hero who's in here fighting for America versus Brittney Griner, right?
And what she got locked up for? What was it, marijuana or something?
She has some oil, a little bit of weed, and then I think she has some cannabis oil. Now, apparently, she's gone to Russia. She played, so in the off season, see, there's a lot to this I don't think people understand. Right. So in the off season, she would go to Russia and play over there. Like, because, the WNBA, they complain about not getting the money, but they don't even, what people don't realize is that the NBA subsidizes their salaries already. Like the WNBA does not generate enough income for like to be able to even come close to getting paid the way that the NBA players do. So the NBA,
it's not enough of a fan base.
It's not enough of a fan base. You know what I'm saying? So all the talk about equal pay, this is why people be mad at the woke side. Like y'all just be wanting stuff that you can't have because it's just not the way things are set up.
Unreasonable.
It's unreasonable, fam. Like you're not gonna get. You know what I'm saying? It's unreasonable. Like this is the problem with the quote unquote left, right? It's just unreasonable. Y'all are just unreasonable to a fault. So we get into that. So she would go there. So she knew the rules. She knew like, hey, you can't have this. So when she got caught with those drugs, it wasn't like, oh no, like I'm not. I didn't know that you couldn't do this. Please don't arrest me. I wouldn't have. She knew that, right? So that's one thing. It was still a small amount, and it was clear Russia was being petty because of the Ukraine. We get all of that, right? The other thing I found out about was, again, it's either her or this military hero, right? That was the other thing I found out about. It's either one or the other, which I thought was really interesting in that sense.
Yeah, that's crazy to me. I didn't know that. That's wild.
And so they chose her for that, And so I think for me personally, the most challenging thing about it for me, now this is, again, a guy who's been locked up before and comes from that. Here's what's challenging for me, right? She's in there because of drugs. In our country, we got people locked up longer than they should be because of drugs and things like that. This is not an uncommon reality.
Oh, yeah.
I had friends that got time much longer than they should have gotten, but for circumstances that we won't discuss right now, they were given a longer sentence than necessary. So it's not like, so when you compare like someone like her who's been there, that really broke the law, wasn't tripping, to a military hero, bro,
right,
who's been sitting in the prison. Like, can you imagine the psyche of his family? Assuming the military guy has family, can you imagine what they're thinking? That this girl got off because she can play basketball and is somewhat famous. And if we're gonna keep it 100, it's the intersectionality part, right? So black, female, lesbian, some quasi celebrity, woo, she gets off. Other dude, white military dude, doesn't. Right. So I feel like I didn't celebrate her getting out. I was glad for her because I'm just glad when anybody gets out and haven't been locked up before.
Yeah.
But I just thought what we traded her for was it's just stupid. And when you watch Russia's kind of Good Morning America, they're laughing at America for that trade.
Well, I mean, I think it ultimately speaks to the character of our country as a whole. You know what I'm saying? At least our representatives. You know what I'm saying? And what they value, what they care about. So
Well, but that's what it is. And here's the thing that I thought was interesting though. Depending on who you heard report, like, so I am an avid equal opportunity news reader, right? So I have this app called Ground News that lets you read any article from left, right, or center. I like this app a lot. When I'm going to read news, unless it's Apple News, and sometimes it just comes in and I'll read an article. But if I really want to find out how they're spinning it, I'll look at Ground News, type in either the article, whatever, and so if you're on the right, you make it clear, black, female, lesbian, drug addict, basketball. It's just the way that they frame it. Then if you're on the left, it's like. So again, I do think for where America is in the world stage. So separate from just politics for a second. If you think about the world stage of America, that matters, like who our president is and how we're perceived on the international level, if for no other reason, because we're constantly under threat from countries like China, Middle Eastern countries, anyone, even we're constantly a threat. Even within America, you have militia, right? These militia groups in different parts of the country that want to overthrow the government. So whoever represents the government, the president, those things, that the perception of him affects the perception of America's strength, right? So when I think about it on that level, and then them choosing her over this dude, Trump would have clearly chose the dude, the war hero, over this dude, right? So you see these disparities. I think Joe Biden is not only a horrible, dementia president, but I think this decision, it's another layer of how weak America is, both psychologically, I think militaristically, and then I just think cognitively. And so the rest of the world is watching this play out, and I think it's really just wild.
It's tough because, I mean, you do have the aspect of it being a female versus a military dude. You know what I'm saying? Like, this guy knows how to survive these type of atmospheres.
100%.
He's trained for it. She's not. You got all that involved as well. So it does make it tough. But the idea that they gave the option makes it that much more interesting, because now I understand why this dude, the Lord of War, was put up, as like, yo, we want him. And we'll give you one of these. Right. Like, now I understand. I didn't get it before. I was like, yo, hold on. She don't match up with this dude. Now I understand. It's wild. Yeah.
Well, and this is going to be kind of, what I'm about to say is kind of wild, but it's just true. Like, so you're right in that the Brittney Griner is not built for that in terms of being that way.
But she did put herself there, yeah.
She did. But I do think, here's the thing, though, and this is just a reality. This isn't, like, in a female prison, there's tons of lesbianism going on, right? So on one level, she's seriously, right? Like, because she is a lesbian, she was in one level, she's in a culture that celebrates the way she is. If she was not a lesbian, it's a good just a regular American woman, it's a good possibility it'd have been a lot tougher for her, I think. Now, granted, it's still prison.
I think you went out mad far, but
no, I'm telling you, bro.
We don't know what Russian prisons are like. We don't know because Russia's a little different than America when it comes to that to homosexuality and all that. So
and they can hate Americans and all that, but
homosexuality might not be popping in the women prisons over there. I mean,
it's popping over there, bro. It's popping over there. So I just think.
I'm trying, people. I'm trying.
It's not. I'm saying. So I just think, for all I know, Brittney Griner might have been enjoying her time. So anyway, I just think I think it's my issue is more how we appear on the world stage. We just look weak, bro.
For sure, we look foolish.
We look weak. We look like a weak country. And when you look weak, it makes people who want to attack you. It gives them more confidence.
I mean, keep it 100. That's the only reason I like Trump is because we didn't look weak when he was president. I mean, we look like we look a little crazy. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. But let me say, I'm glad you said that. I'm glad we're saying we, right? Because let me give you.
We look weak with Obama too. I mean,
we did.
We look mad weak.
Yeah. This Bama Trump was like, oh, I dropped a bomb. I decided to drop a bomb while eating a piece of cake this morning. I mean, remember when he said that? So. But you know what else? No, here's the real problem. Oh, this is the part I meant to say. I'm sorry, I got distracted by the women prison lesbian stuff. Here's the point that I meant to really say. The real issue for me with this is when you watch the Russian kind of Good Morning America. Here's what they say. They describe it like this: the American people chose this. So they see this decision, and this is what I realized: when you're not in America, you view sort of what happens in America as the will of the people.
Oh yeah.
That's what you do. They don't have categories of these politicians make their own decisions. They're not even thinking that the fact that most politicians are doing what they're doing based on corporate America and not their constituencies. They're not thinking, they don't realize that. They don't realize that all the lobbyists and all the decisions that are being made often serve corporate America, not what the will of the people are. But in their minds, though, it's the American people chose Brittney Griner over this dude. And that's what I mean about it makes us look weak. They're not thinking the administration or who it was Joe Biden. They're thinking America voted and decided to choose this person over that person. And so it's a judgment against us as a nation, whether we want, and that's just how we're perceived. We're perceived honestly, monolithically.
The reason we're perceived that way is because, the masses do kind of sway the decisions.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So when media...
Well, decisions like this, the masses don't. I mean, yeah, you get like little
they don't,
free Brittney Griner and all that, but...
Nah, but I don't mean that they actually do. What I mean is that it's perceived that way, from a world scale, because when America's news is always spewing one way out, you know what I'm saying? Like all the multimedia and everything is constantly being spewed out there, and they're changing the masses' opinions, and then the masses' opinions align with like a Brittney Griner. That's why I said it just it exposes where our character is as a nation worldwide, because for us to choose her over him as a nation in their minds, I mean, that's what I was saying.
And that's what they're laughing at. They're laughing at that. Like, man, America is wilding now. This is stuff they're like, they were laughing. Like, they said, look, we're happy. We're glad that he's out, but we're surprised. They were surprised. They were surprised at the trade. And it's like, wow, bro, we just look like suckers for real. And so I can see why people would want someone like Trump in office.
It definitely wasn't a strategic trade. I mean,
no,
think about,
that we know of. Now, if there's something that happened on the back end, you know how these things go, that we know of, it wasn't strategic. But I mean,
yeah.
But so staying in the same lane as what we're talking about of just the utter foolishness, right? So if we're thinking of sort of the who's in charge, it's the left right now, right? So this isn't a reflection of everyone, but it's a reflection of a particular institution that has a history of being sort of radical in its pushback against what's happening in modern politics.
Stanford, they're Ivy League, ain't they?
No, I don't think so. Stanford's not. I don't think Stanford's Ivy League, but Stanford has a history. Stanford and like colleges like Cal, Berkeley, they have a history of being like these liberal, like places where, especially during like the Vietnam War and through all the 70s, the 60s, races, they were like these kind of liberal colleges that kind of made their name pushing back against things, right? So the reason why we're talking about Stanford is because Stanford University released recently, all right? Stanford University released something called the Elimination of Harmful Language Initiative, okay? This is, I'm laughing now because you're going to laugh with me in a few minutes when we go through some of this. So let me read to you briefly what Stanford University says the point of this initiative is. All right, here we go. Stay with me. The Elimination of Harmful Language Initiative, EHLI, is a multi-phase, multi-year project to address harmful language in IT at Stanford. EHLI is one of the actions prioritized in the Statement of Solidarity and Commitment to Action, which was published by the Stanford Council and People of Color and Technology Affinity Group in December 2020. The goal of the Elimination of Harmful Language Initiative is to eliminate many forms of harmful language, including racist, violent and biased, disability bias, ethnic slurs, gender bias, implicit bias, sexual bias, language, and Stanford websites and code. Okay, that doesn't sound like a bad thing at all. You read that and you think, okay, wait, what's wrong with that? What's wrong with that? So let me make this clear. This is Stanford doing this on Stanford's campus. So you might hear about this, depending on who you hear from, they'll make it seem like they're imposing this on everyone. No, they're imposing this in the Stanford IT department primarily.
Still about 17,000 students on Stanford.
Yeah, but it's the IT department. But I do think you are going to it's going to trickle down, right? There's trickle down economics, right? Trickle down psychologics, right? So we do have that reality. All right. So here's how it breaks down. All right. This thing has 9 categories. All right. They broke this document down, and all these names, all these words, they have them in 9 categories. Let me read you what this is. So this is a Stanford University document. All right. Has a list of words that Stanford has determined that are not useful. They're bad words to use. All right. There's 13 pages of words and terms, and so here's how it's set up. They have the word, they have a word you should use instead, and then they have an explanation of why this word over that word. All right. So when we read it, we're going to read it as, here's the word they say you shouldn't use, here's the word they say you should use, and then some of them will read the explanations if we're able to handle it. All right. And I would say this, all the words fall under 9 different categories. So here are the categories. All right. Ableist. Ableist is one category. Here's what it says about ableist. Some of these are like, what does that mean? I'm only going to read the ones that seem like you might not know what it means. All right, so here's what ableist is. Ableist language is language that is offensive to people who live with disabilities and or devalues people who live with disabilities. The unintentional use, mind you, unintentional use, right? So it's not even the people who are intentionally trying to offend people. They're saying the unintentional use of such terms the belief that people who live with disabilities are abnormal. In theory, 100%. Okay, 100%. Then they got, so it's ableist, ageism, which you know what that means, just talking about people's ages. Colonialism. Here's colonialism. Colonialism is the policy or practice of acquiring full or partial political control over another country, occupying it with settlers and exploiting it economically. It is better to avoid terms that derive from colonialism, right? So think Wakanda forever, you colonizer, right? So this is what they're basically saying. So this is a category, all right? Culturally appropriate. Culturally appropriate language misuses terms that hold meaning to a particular culture in a way that often lacks respect or appreciation, all right? You got gender-based language. Imprecise language, which means it's the terms that utilize euphemisms, vagueness, or inaccurate words to not say what one is trying to say. Oh, this is going to get good. Institutionalized racism, and then person first. And this is, person first is defined as the use of person first language helps everyone resist defining others by a single characteristic or experience if that person doesn't wish to be defined that way. And there's more. Then violent, and then additional considerations. All right. Having said that, let's read some of the terms that Stanford University has deemed, and we're going to go through each of the categories. So let's start with ableist. All right, ableist. Here we go. Here's a term that you shouldn't use, and here's what they say. So, addict. So you shouldn't use the term addict. You should consider using person with a substance abuse. And here's their reason. Using person-first language helps not to define people by just one of their characteristics. So they're saying, instead of addict, person with a substance abuse disorder. Okay. So here's what's going to happen. I can tell you right now, because some of these are like not one word for one word. It's like, don't say this word, use this phrase. So they're going to make conversations a lot longer, because now you're talking about things in ways that are like crazy, all right? So you got addict. I'm going to give you another one. Basket case, all right? They say consider using nervous. Originally referred to one who has lost all 4 limbs. Oh, no, sorry. That's the wrong. Yeah, right. Oh, wow, it is that. All four limbs and therefore needed to be carried around in a basket. So they're saying if you use the term basket case, it was originally referred to as one who lost all their limbs, therefore mocking people who are disabled. Now, I could be wrong. I've never met anyone who felt like that about the word basket case. But let's keep going. I'm skipping through these, but it gets better. All right. Committed suicide. So that's what they don't want you to say. Here's what they want you to say. Died by suicide. Here's their reason. Ableist language that trivializes the experiences of people living with mental health conditions. Okay. So committed suicide versus died by suicide. So here's the problem for me with this one. They're making it their preference is died by instead of committed. But the real question is, what does suicide mean? What does suicide mean, right? Suicide means a person takes their own life. Right? So if you say they committed suicide, you're describing committed is the action is the word that informs the action of suicide. They committed it. They did this to themselves. If we say died by suicide, everyone knows suicide means they killed themselves. So how is died by less offensive than committed? Help me. Stanford, I know you're watching this.
I guess it sounds less judgmental.
Sure.
Like death by suicide.
But I'd be curious to know, like, are people, like, I wonder, this would be, what would be helpful to me?
Ain't nobody that committed suicide offended.
They definitely not offended. But I wonder, are there families of people who have committed suicide? Are they offended at the term committed suicide?
Probably. I'd imagine there are people who don't want to hear that term. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So next one, crazy, right? Don't say that, but instead say surprising, wild. Ableist language that trivializes the experiences of people living with mental health conditions, all right? So here's the thing. Some of these words they're trying to get rid of sort of colloquialisms or what we might call slang, right? Like I might be like, man, you so crazy. So now I'm supposed to say, man, you so surprising.
I get it on a personal level, like on a personal relationship level. Like if I have a relationship with somebody who don't like certain words, I shouldn't use those certain words because they're going to cause an unnecessary offense or hurt. It's like I get that, but the problem is when they're trying to take this and make this like a societal, decision. Or
now, to their credit, it's only at Stanford, but it's going to have trickle down, trickle down, right? It's going to try to. So to go with what you're saying, so let me just cat out of the bag for a second. Here's my big I got a few things. One of my big concerns with this right here is what you just said, Strack. It's trying to apply Romans 14, right? Trying to not like doing something that doesn't cause your brother to stumble, right? That's Romans 14. Don't cause your brother to stumble. If you disagree on something and it bothers him, then serve him. Just don't. So remember, if it's wine or drink or meat, sacrifice idols, and it causes your brother to stumble, don't do it. Don't let your freedom cause someone to stumble, right? Mm-hmm. In the Bible, that is a personal decision between you and an individual that you're choosing to humble yourself. When you present it like this, you're imposing your understanding and your definition in terms of what you think is appropriate on people, and you're doing it the opposite of what Romans 14 says. Romans 14 is saying, don't bind someone's conscience by your freedom. Mm-hmm. Like if it's like, hey man, would you mind if I had a drink? Oh bro, nah, I just don't. My parents were alcohol. No worries, man. No worries. But what this document is doing is trying to bind our consciences to their convictions. So it makes it seem like I'm trying to help society be better, but what you're doing is binding my conscience to your personal convictions that may not even be convictions that I have or the people around me have. So now I don't go to Stanford, but if I go to Stanford and I find out I can't say these things, because sometimes when you use these terms, you get punished severely for them. If you misgender someone, you're losing your job potentially.
So is Stanford applying disciplinary actions to these terms?
That I don't know.
Okay.
I didn't, because I couldn't get past the absurdity of some of these terms.
That would be interesting.
That will be interesting. All right. So, tame. Don't use tame. Use boring or uncool. So it says ableist language that can trivialize the experience of people. So a lot of this, it says lame. I'm sorry. I thought it said tame. I was like, what? How are they done? My bad. Lame. It says lame. So this is the thing. They're talking about how you interact with people who are handicapped. That's what it means by ableist. So they don't want you to say this about people who are handicapped or something like that because of the impact it will have on them. All right. So terms like paraplegic. Here's what they want you to say instead of paraplegic. Person with a spinal cord injury, person who is paralyzed. Okay. Quadriplegic. Person with a spinal cord injury, person who is paralyzed.
You know what though? I mean, this kind of seems like we've already been punched in the face and now we're being plucked in the forehead.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Because
what you mean by punching the face?
Yeah, what I mean by that is like the whole LGBTQ revolution, right? So you got all the changing of language for the sake of people feeling comfortable. You know what I'm saying? So like they done went from don't say boy and girl anymore, say they them. You know what I'm saying? So That's getting punched in the face. That's like a serious attack on language, on verbs, on identifiers, like and now you got Stanford doing this article. It's kind of like, what is this really though? You know what I'm saying? Like this is like you trying to pluck me when I've already got punched in the face. That's how it feels.
Yeah, I mean, I think again, so like I was saying, I think it's what people don't realize in trying to make society a better place and all of that. I feel like it's forcing people to accept and this is not even just Stanford, like all of the pronouns, everything. Like, fine if you want to be called this, to that, and the third. That's fine. I can view people calling themselves their own pronouns like a nickname. You know what I'm saying? It could be like a nickname. Strack the Wolverine. Your name ain't the Wolverine, right?
Right.
Strack the Wolverine. I added that to you as like a nickname, and that's people call you Wolverine. You'll respond to that because you understand that that's a part of it, right? I'm fine with that, but it's the imposition of conscience is the problem, right? So if and again, I don't know the history of this document, but if Stanford were like, hey, we're going to do a list, and then we're going to do a poll and see what you all think, all you students. Are you okay with this? It doesn't. It becomes a small group of people decide what thousands and thousands of people are allowed to say and what consequences come with that.
Which is what it's been the whole time. It's a small group of people changing for everybody.
Right. But I don't think we see it like that, though. We see it as sort of this, like what they're trying to do. We see it as, or they frame it not like that. They frame it like it's trying to be less harmful to society. That's why it's called the Elimination of Harmful Language Initiative.
Right, yeah.
So when you hear that, who's going to disagree that harmful language should be eliminated? I mean, that's Ephesians 4, right?
Yeah.
That's James 3, right? Taming the tongue, right? We want to talk with people. We want to build others up, right? Seasoned with salt. You know, Paul said this.
Come in as an angel of light.
100%. 100%. And this is where I think, wow, you start getting into all this stuff, and it's like, you don't really need God anymore if we can kind of develop a certain morality, but you can't develop a morality that's not offensive. You cannot. There's no such thing as a moral society that's not going to offend anyone. But that's the vision. That's kind of like the American dream, right? You give a vision of something that you do not allow some people to participate in, but you talk about it like it's for everyone, right? It's kind of like that. You're trying to create a moral society based on language and certain ways of thinking that was supposed to better society, but you're also forcing people to go against their own moral conviction in order for you to have this great moral society. So you're presenting it like this is a great thing, but then you're eliminating the particular distinctions of like how people think, their own convictions, discrimination. How do we do? You eliminate that and say, no, this is a bad thing. So you can do that, but just do it according to our terms. It's like, who are you fooling?
Yeah, what was wild is they're removing like a monumental building block for character, which
100%.
is offense. You know what I mean?
100%.
Offense is something that is used to build men and women. I mean, you build as a person who you are in your maturity based on how many times you've been offended and how you've been offended. Real rap. You learn to forgive, you learn to care for people, you learn to return and restore your own mental capacity through offenses.
Yeah.
You learn what value is. You learn what value is. I mean,
well said.
You remove that from society, what do you have left? You got a bunch of Mr. Softies.
Well, if we're going to, let's just talk constitutionalist for a second. The idea of free speech, we need to start taking away from the First Amendment then. You need to erase free speech then. Because
what is the First Amendment? That joint ain't been around for a minute around here.
Yeah, but in theory, but again, this is what I'm getting at, bro.
Yeah.
You're talking about the functional application of it. I'm talking about the way they present it as who we are.
Sure.
But then the functional application is, no, your speech isn't free. Because if you say this to these people, we're going to penalize you. So your speech is free as long as it stays in the confines of what we define as good.
Right.
So you're free to live in this cage. You know what I'm saying?
It's kind of like Romans 6. You're free in your sin. You're slave to sin or slave
100%.
to righteousness.
You are free to go anywhere you want in this cage.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? You can do whatever you want. You can, wherever you want to go in this cage, you're free to do so.
And you don't got the key.
But what I'm getting at is I think me and you see that. I think we think a lot of people see it. And people do on one level. But there is sort of this really mix, this sort of mash of, like, what's really happening in the culture right now, which is fascinating, even among believers, is it's trying to redefine what the American dream is. And it's not so much the idea of the American dream is wrong. It's that for so long, certain people were not allowed to experience it, but were told that these things apply to all people. And this is this is the rub of what's happening. So the primary lens in which it's been viewed through is race, right? But we haven't looked at class at all.
Nah.
We've really looked at class. Class came in with cultural Marxism. That's the critique. That's not a race critique. Cultural Marxism was a class critique. The rich are taking advantage of the poor. And then it became like, it's always been a class 100%
issue. I mean, that 100%. Goes back to partiality. That's what partiality was all about.
James, thank you. That's what it is, right? It's all, we get it in tonight, baby. That's what it is, though, right? It's very much that. It's the partiality that he's talking about. James is like, look, don't the rich oppress you? Right. Don't they throw you into prison? So these categories, this is what was wild to me, bro. Now we talking. Now we get into it. This is what was wild to me was that all these categories are in Scripture. Intersectionality is a biblical concept. Mm-hmm. Jesus healed a woman whose son died, and he did it. She was a woman. He said she was a woman. She was a widow. She was old, and he had compassion on her because in that culture, an old woman, widow, had no one to provide for her.
Facts.
So Jesus in Luke 7 touches her son's body and brings him back to life because of that. That's intersectionality.
That's why true religion is caring for orphans and widows.
100%. 100%, right? Because those are the most vulnerable people. That's intersectionality. Yeah. Orphans are who? Who are orphans? There's no adults that are orphans. They're children without, you get what I'm saying? So like this stuff isn't identified. This stuff isn't that. So it's just fascinating how all these things have come to play. But let's keep going because we got more to discuss. We're not even hitting the real deeper issue right now. We add a little bit. We do a little seasoning right there. We just dropping a little seasoning on, but we can really hit y'all with the real deeper issue. What's really going on with all of this stuff? All right, let's go culturally appropriative. All right, brave. They don't want you to use brave. They want you to use none. It says none do not use. So here's why. The term perpetuates the stereotype of the noble, courageous savage equating the indigenous male as being less than a man. So they're assuming that the word brave is talking about what we would historically have called Native Americans. Now they're indigenous people. They don't like that term, so we call them indigenous. So they're thinking the term brave is a derogative term towards them. Now, I don't know many people who call someone brave as a nickname or something like that. When you say you're being brave, that means you're fighting against the fears that you have, but like to them, it perpetuates the stereotype, the noble, courageous savage, equating the indigenous.
The noble, courageous savage. Those,
Yeah.
I mean, noble and courageous sound really good. Like savage is okay. Yeah, I understand how y'all appropriated that. You know, but noble and courageous and brave, these are good terms.
Yeah. So now these are targeting indigenous people. So you have to know this. So like low men on the totem pole. So here's what they want you to say. Lacking seniority. Doesn't have the power or prestige.
Okay.
So it trivializes something that is sacred to indigenous peoples. Also, in some First Nation communities, being low on the totem pole is actually a higher honor than being on top. The term also reinforces male-dominated language.
I understand the logic. I mean, when
I get the logic of all of it.
Low on the totem pole, like to me, that is the foundation. That's the dude holding it up. You know what I'm saying? But it's just that's real silly though, fam.
So I get the language, right? So I get the logic. I understand what they're trying to do, but I'm thinking of this as best as I can through biblical lenses, which have a sense of okay. I can get with this on a biblical level because we want our speech to be seasoned with salt. We want our speech to build one another up, right? I can get with that. But some of the terms that they're using, they're really acting as if, and let's just be honest, we always are honest, right? I think, and I could be 100% wrong, so I'm not the Lord. I honestly think this is a bunch of elite left white people sitting around making lists about what they think is offensive to other groups of people.
I'll do you one better. What I think was going on here was they had two plants at a windowsill, and they spoke all these words to these plants. And the ones that hurt the plants, they put on this list. So there was no brave, no low totem pole plants because it was killing them.
Fam, I honestly think that's some of the best things I've heard all day, actually. I think that's...
I bet you my theory is on point.
Your theory is probably on point, and it's actually concerning that it's on point. All right, so the phrase, too many Indians, not enough chiefs. Too many chiefs, not enough Indians. So that means a lack of clear direction, too many competing ideas is what they want you to say. Trivializes
I love that phrase. I think it makes total sense.
What? Which
too
phrase?
many chiefs, not enough Indians.
It does make a lot of sense. Trivializes the structure of indigenous communities. And so they have here tribal knowledge and tribe. Instead of tribal knowledge, say institutional knowledge.
Wow.
Fam. Institutional is too broad, right? When you say tribal, you're speaking of a particular people group within the institution that are like-minded, right? So
I think the word tribal is more offensive.
Yeah, I think. Well, that's that's what they're saying. They're saying don't use tribal.
Oh, okay.
They're saying don't use tribal knowledge. Use institutional knowledge. Don't use tribe. Use friends, network, family support system.
Okay.
So interesting. All right. I don't even know if we should hit gendered base. Let's do a couple of these. All right. We're going to do one or two more categories. Then we're going to get to the deeper issue because we can do this all night. This is 13 pages of. All right. So we'll do a couple more, two or three other categories. All right. Gender based. Instead of preferred pronouns, consider using pronouns. Here's the context. The word preferred, they put in quotations, suggests that non-binary gender identity is a choice and a preference. See, here's the problem with this statement, right? And this is why I totally get and agree with people's pushing back against the left and wokeism. Although I do think the left and wokeism are actually two different groups of people, to be honest. They may originate on the left, but they're like a brand of the left. I know some people that are on the left that wouldn't agree with any of this stuff. But for the sake of this conversation, we'll just call it wokeism, right? People who are on the left who think like this. Here's a problem with this particular thing. Now let's look at the context. So they say preferred pronouns? No. Pronouns? Yes. And here's their reasoning, okay? The reasoning is the word preferred, they put it in quotations, suggests that non-binary gender identity is a choice and a preference. All right, here's the problem with that, right? Most of the people who consider themselves to be non-binary, well, I won't say most of the people. I've heard from quite a few people who have this idea that gender and sexuality is a spectrum, okay? Some years ago, there was an actress by the name of Ellen Page who then said she was Elliot Page, and then who said she was non-binary, and then said she, so this thing changes.
The Juno,
right? The girl from Juno, right? I got a bar about her too. That's tough.
Me too.
Yeah. I think I heard you. Did you put it in the? I think you put it in the song I heard. I got a bar that's kind of tough.
You might have.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying. I know your music, boy. So look. So here's a problem with that. There's a lot of people who will change they change that from day to day. Okay, well, actually, no, I'm not really gay or lesbian. Now I'm actually non-binary, but I'm also not this. But then I'm this, and then so even this individual, Ellen Page, became Elliot Page, and they became something else, right? So how can you say that it's not a choice when a bunch of people who identify as that change their gender, their pronouns, they change them from they, them, to them, to it, to that?
I mean, the whole term non-binary means you choose not to be in any position, not to be stuck.
100%, right? So stay with that, right? Stay with that. I'm glad you said that, because I was good. Stay with that. So if you choose not to be stuck, right, and conform to sort of what they call heteronormative language, right? Then pronouns in and of themselves shouldn't matter at all. Because a pronoun is a definition. It's a defining description of who you are.
Right.
Even if it's them, they, you're saying you don't have any pronoun. You're not bound to these pronouns. You're not bound to these norms, but you're making they, them, whatever. You're making those norms. Calling an individual they you're making it norm to be that way. So that's why I said it's just, these are choices people are making. To try to say don't use preferred because preferred suggests a choice is taking away, is lying. It's lying. It's not the reality.
It is lying.
All right. They said instead of saying ballsy, use bold risk taker. Okay. And it says why? Attributes personality traits to anatomy. All right. Okay. All right.
I mean, yeah, they don't want personality to be attributed to anatomy.
Okay. All right. I mean,
boys do this, girls do that.
Right.
They don't
Kindergarten Cop, right? Boys have a penis, girls have a vagina.
Yeah,
okay.
They don't want all that.
Remember that was in Kindergarten Cop. Now that would probably get banned. Remember that?
What?
Did you ever see Kindergarten Cop?
Oh yeah.
Classic movie. And straight biology in that movie that would get crushed today. They would go after the director. They'd find the little kid actor who's an adult now and try to ruin him because he said the line in the movie.
Yeah.
Classic.
Schwarzenegger was hilarious in that.
He was hilarious in that joint. That was a good movie, Kindergarten Cop. Go check it out. But it'll trigger you if you get caught up into what boys and girls are. It'll trigger you.
For sure.
By this one statement, this little kindergartner said. All right. Chairman, chairwoman. Instead, say chairperson or chair. Lumps a group of people using gender binary language which doesn't include everyone. Same with congressman, congresswoman. Firemen, firemen. Lumps a group of people using masculine language and or into gender binary groups which don't include everyone. So if you eliminate, so when you use these terms, right, you're using these terms in a broadly. These kinds of words are also distinctions. So if there really is firemen, are you not allowed to say firemen? You're supposed to say fire persons? Mm-hmm. Even if all those guys over there are fine with being called a fireman. You see, this is the lunacy of the left. And they think they're being helpful, but you're actually the eliminate harmful language initiative is actually going to cause harm because you're making it an initiative. Yeah. That's the part that's crazy. All right, so he, person's name or they. Unless you know the person you're addressing uses he as their pronoun, it is better to use they or to ask the person which pronouns they use.
There it is. That's the one that changed it at all. That's the foundation.
All right. So then they got stuff like man hours, man in the middle, mankind, manpower. Man in the mirror? They should have that here. Because Michael Jackson sang it. That's the context.
That's right.
She, she-male, tranny, transgendered, you guys. Instead, you should say folks, people, everyone.
Hey, you guys.
Right. All right. Imprecise language. Abort. Consider using cancel end. The term can unintentionally raise religious moral concerns over abortion.
What is going on?
American. So do not say American. Say U.S. citizen. This term, go ahead.
Nah, go ahead.
This term often refers to people from the United States only, thereby insinuating that the U.S. is the most important country in the Americas, which is actually made up of 42 countries. So they're basically, because you got South America, all these things, right? So they're basically saying when you say American, well, the South doesn't consider themselves American. Like in the same way, we're saying that North America is the only real American, and that's what they're getting at.
Okay.
Ooh, listen to this. Karen. Instead, say demanding or entitled white woman.
How about not? How about don't say it?
That's less offensive than Karen? This term is used to ridicule, demean a certain group of people based on their behaviors. So entitled white woman is not going to be demeaning or offensive to a white woman. Shouts to all the white women watching the show, the broadcast. Would you like to be called an entitled white woman, or is Karen less offensive? I just this is fascinating to me. I'm just looking at the chat right now. The chat is on fire right now. I'm just trying to look at the chat to see what's popping. What's up, Vision? The Vision. Hey, Vision. I got you on that verse too. I ain't forget about you, family. I just ain't been in the studio for a minute, but I got you. I'm going back in January. Will is a postman, and he's busy. Oh, he's a post person.
He's a post person.
He's a post person. And so he's busy right now, but I got you, fam. All right. Yeah, the chat is popping. All right. Let's get back to this. This is fascinating. Okay. Straight. Instead, use heterosexual. This term implies that anyone who is not heterosexual is bent or not normal.
Yo, they just can't help it. They can't help but be honest. They just can't help it.
Fam, so I'm not cisgender. I'm not cis nothing. I'm not a male at all, right?
Yeah, I always thought cis was suspect.
Cis sounds soft to me. I grew up in the era when cis was short for sissy. Or right. Cis was talking to a female.
You're cis, yeah.
Yeah, you're cis. Yeah. So if I don't want to be called cis or cis male, right? Cisgendered.
Right.
Then what does that mean? Like, this is what I'm saying. Like, who determines who's man? I don't know.
It's like Latinx.
Slim, that's on the list? Latinx is on this list, bro.
Flora and I hate that term. What is it for?
Fam, let's go to
Latino, that. Latina, you know what I mean?
Listen,
Latinx.
Hey, man, but it's, the white
Who
people.
Who even made that up? That was made up, how many years ago? And I doubt Hispanics had anything to do with it. Man. If they did, they went to Stanford.
I don't know any Latinos. I'm married to a Latino. My church got a big Latino population. I ain't never heard one of them say, "Hey man, Latinx, bro."
Yeah, right.
Latinx.
X what?
Okay, let's keep going. Survivor. Person who has experienced. Person who has been impacted by it. They want you to say that instead. Don't say they're a survivor. Say they're a person who has experienced X, Y, Z. Person who has been impacted by it, but not survivor.
That's like that's Destiny Child's biggest song.
That's it. I mean, they
How you
better
gonna throw out Survivor?
because they don't like Beyonce. The Beehive is going to be on this. Listen,
We don't believe
here's the logic.
People.
Here's the logic. Using person first language helps to not define people by just one of their experiences. If the person identifies with the term, then use it.
Oh, I'm sorry. If they say it's okay.
Victim. They got victim. Same thing. Person who has been experienced, a person who has been impacted by. All right. I'm not even going to use these institutionalized racists. I'm going to skip this category. Oh, no. Hold on. Okay. Here we go. I got it. This is a couple. I'm sorry. Let brothers and sisters cross-examine us. Yeah. Here's one. Cakewalk. Don't say cakewalk. Instead, say easy or simple. And here's why. Enslaved people covertly used exaggerated dance to mock their enslavers. This turned into balls that the white enslavers would hold for entertainment, where the prize was a cake. Slim. So they're basically saying that because white colonizers, slave owners, would have these balls where the slaves would dance, but the dances were intentionally mocking the slave owners and they ain't know it, the winner would get a cake. So they're saying cakewalk is a racial slur that you should say is easy or simple. Listen, so they got ghetto, right? Ghetto.
Inspector Gadgets out here, fam. They reach.
Ghetto, and instead use neighborhood's name. So if you don't know the neighborhood, the term indicates any socially segregated non-white neighborhood.
I know a lot of whites that live in the ghetto.
Mm-hmm. And sometimes people are proud to be there because they have to work through a certain level of adversity.
Yeah.
Grandfather. Don't say grandfather, say legacy.
Don't say grandfather, say legacy.
Say,
I gotta call my grandfather legacy.
Well, in this sense, this is what they mean. The term has its roots in the grandfather clause adopted by southern states to deny voting rights to blacks.
Oh, so don't say like grandfather then.
Yeah,
like
right.
That kind of got you. Okay. All right. Okay.
I'm going to skip this one. Let's go to person first, right? This is the last category.
Where was Stanford during the civil rights movement? Where were they at?
That's a good question. I think Stanford, Berkeley. I mean, California's always been liberal, right?
Right.
But here's the thing about California, right? So you have this list, right? You have this list of people that you're trying to help not be offended or hurt or whatever, because you really care about people's feelings, right? This is Stanford, Northern California, more so, right? Now, I go to San Francisco every year, sometimes twice a year, to preach. I do photography there. I love it. My buddy flies me out. Sometimes I get to bring my family, but more often than not, I'm going out. And it's a couple days for me to be able to just kind of refresh and do that, right? I can take you to downtown San Francisco in certain parts of it, and it looks like downtown LA, where it's utter homelessness. So you got people worried about what terms that will offend people because you care so much about people. But I can take you to downtown. I'm not even from downtown San Francisco. I can take you to the business district down there, or the Mission District in San Francisco, and you'll see utter homelessness out there. It's been that way for a long time. LA has one of the largest homeless. They call it joint Skid Row, fam.
Yeah, it's famous.
Like that joint is famous for just homelessness. Now these mamas be having some good tents though. When I was in LA last, I was like, Dad, this mama got an Eddie Bauer tent out this joint. I mean, I don't know where they get them from. Some of these members is living their best life as they can for what they got, right? But there's this huge population of homelessness. Why not take some of the resources and initiatives and money that you use to try to change a department or a school and apply it to people who actually can use it and benefit from it? This is the stuff that is like stupid to me. So the federal government can give millions of people, which many people were grateful. This isn't a critique of the heart, but they can give millions of people stimulus checks, a couple of them, to get them through COVID. And yet we can't do anything about Skid Row. We can't do anything about Skid Row. We can't do anything about the homelessness in the Mission District. You care, California, you care so much about people, and these documents is proof of your care, but yet there's all these people that really need real-time help. And where are you at? And so this is what I mean. So this is the ultimate form of virtue signaling, right? This is what they call this is a virtue signaling in the epitome. We're not trying to offend anyone, and we think we should care about this, and yet the people who actually who are the most offended are the people who are the poor, the widows, and the orphans of our culture are the homeless. They're the homeless. People like that. People like that. See, here's the problem in America, because we're a capitalistic nation, and we have this idea that merit is what counts. So if you don't have money, then you didn't put in the work. You didn't put any merit in. And so you see poor as a character issue.
Yeah.
That's what happens in America. The Bible doesn't see poor as a character issue. You see poor as a character issue. And so you treat people who are poor, but you see these rich people who get offended because of their sexuality or because of whatever. This is something we need to really, but you judge people who are actually in real need. It's a character issue. It's a character issue.
I mean, it really comes back to like what you said, the capitalistic society where we have the freedom to pursue happiness and liberty. Mm-hmm. You know, we have the facade of anybody can make it and anybody can be successful. So if you're not, it's your own fault. I mean, this is what I mean. I'm glad you said that. That's a facade because it's not true. Let me give you proof that it's not true. I was actually going to do this on one of the videos, a Kirk Kennedy video, but I'm going to say this right now. I may still do it, but I'm going to say this right now in a statement. Let me give you proof that that's not true, right? Because that's how they present America as, look, anybody can come here and make it. If you work hard, go to school, go to all that stuff, merit, right? They make it seem like that's it. Here's why we know that's not true. A couple of years ago, a huge scandal came out about particular people in Hollywood and other people who were elite, like rich people, like actresses and famous people. That. They all got caught in a scandal of paying this one particular guy money to get their kids into Ivy League schools. Yeah. Stanford was one of those schools they were trying to get people in. This guy worked with another guy. And I'm talking about when you saw the list, it was a lot of famous people and then people who had money that we wouldn't have known, but they might be investment bankers or people who are multimillionaires. They were paying this guy money to get their kids scholarships they didn't deserve, to get their kids test scores changed, all this stuff. Now let's think about what we're saying right now. These are people who by default have the financial means to do everything to earn that position, right? You can hire the best trainers, you can hire the best people, you can hire the people who are going to help your kids pass the test. You have the money and the means to hire the best of the best. And even with all of that, you still recognize that merit is not good enough. These rich people, these elites people, Hollywood on down, they know that the idea of merit is not good enough because their children have more opportunities than most people, and they still paid to get them in because they know that merit by itself is not true. I mean, we all know merit is not. One of the things you learn right away with business is networking is key. You network with people. Why? Because you being valued based upon your own skill level is not going to be good enough.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter how skilled you are. You need networking to build. People need to know that you're skilled. They need to tell people you're skilled, and they need to all agree that you're skilled.
Yeah.
That's all a part of it.
Well, that's a huge part of it. But
even
then,
if you are skilled, you still get this based upon, partiality. Like,
Right.
who are you?
well, that's what I'm saying though. It's going to be who you know and how you look. Let's just be
For sure.
honest. We're a superficial nation. We're superficial people. It's who you know and how you look, right? If you look a certain way, you're going to have more credibility and more value, right? That's just the way it is. Our country is very vain. Vanity is an unspoken, like one of the unspoken idols of America. One of the unspoken vices. Vanity is huge.
Yeah, I mean, and it plays in many different ways. Like
Many
one of the
different ways.
things, just to be, keep it a buck, here in Lancaster, when we started the restaurant, one of the main pushes behind our restaurant having a following was the fact that it was a Hispanic woman starting a restaurant.
Right.
That played a major role in our society here, and because this
Is that why y'all called it Flora's?
Nah, it wasn't. But
Okay.
but it still played a part, and we fed off of that joint. So when there was like, hey, women business meeting, we're gonna go check it out and see what it's hitting for. Hey, women business gonna be doing a cover on a magazine, and we're gonna put her on the cover of the magazine, and we're gonna rock with it because it helped build. So societies also, like in the 1950s, if you were a white man, you could start a business probably a lot easier
100%.
than a black man or Hispanic man in any community.
Yeah.
That's just a. So today there's those vices as well, and those partial movements, if you will.
Yeah. No, I think vanity is a huge thing. People talk about, we need to talk more about gluttony. Cool, let's get to that. But vanity is a huge, huge reality in the way we interact with people. We will give people that we think are attractive much more grace than we will someone we don't think is attractive.
It's true.
That's just the way it happens in their culture, right? So let's talk about the deeper concern. For Strack and I, there's always a deeper issue, right? So what's the deeper concern with all of the emphasis on changing language? See, for many of you watching, you, depending on your political disposition, you will probably lean towards the left. And I use that language intentionally, the wokeism and all of that, because that's the cultural way to define these kind of ideas and where we think they originate. The problem is, if you're a believer, you should not fall victim to the superficial explanation of what's happening as if this is merely a political position, right? We have with us the unadulterated truth in the Word of God, and we know from Ephesians 6, Paul says, look, we do not wrestle with flesh and blood. This is why I always have a problem with the designation simply being left or right wing or whatever, as if these are just human ideas imposing themselves on other humans, right? We do not wrestle with flesh and blood, right? We don't. We do not wrestle with flesh and blood, but against the principalities, powers, rulers of this age, in this present darkness, right? So Paul, speaking on behalf of God, is telling us that the world that you and I live in, that's post-resurrection language, is a present darkness guided by supernatural evil beings who work through humanity to bring about certain causes, all right? To bring about these things. So what I'm trying to say is this attack on language is not a product of the left, even if the left is the one more propagating it. As believers, if you are a believer watching, if you are of the Christian tradition, as Strack and I am, then you have to step your discernment game up. And I'm not saying this as a critique, but I'm saying we need to step our game up, right? Because there's more going on than just the left, or depending on where you are, the right. There's a supernatural force at work here, and language is intentional. This is not a random moment of linguistic etymology, right? This is a legitimate satanic strategic attack on people, but especially the body of Christ because of that. Now, I'm going to prove this from the scriptures. I want to walk you through a couple verses briefly just to show you what I mean, all right? Let's start with one that we all know very well, right? We know that Satan His arch enemy is Jesus. So let's start with how Jesus is described. Think of all the ways that Jesus is described. Here's how John describes him in verses 1 and 2 of his gospel. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was with God in the beginning. So he's identifying Jesus as the Word, right? So Jesus is the Word of God. So if you're kind of sort of visual like I am, then you can imagine God being a being. Just like if you could see him and he was a being that didn't have a face or arms, but he was like a being that was there. And then you hear the words, let there be light. Jesus is the Word of God. So the actual words, let there be light, would almost be Jesus, right? It'd be like Jesus. He's the Word of God. Those words are actually him. That's kind of the picture that John's trying to give us, that he's the Word of God. He's the mouthpiece of God. So word is a significant reality. Now remember, Satan is attacking words, right?
I mean, to add to that, he is the communication.
Yes.
He is the communication of God. I mean, when you read in Colossians, he is the fullness of the Godhead, pleased to dwell, to show himself to us.
Right. Let's go to Hebrews 1, right? Verse 3. Here's what it says. Stay with me. I promise we're going to go somewhere. He is the radiance of the glory of God and the exact imprint of his nature, and he upholds the universe by what? By the word of his power. Right? So here's what this, so Jesus is the Word. He's the Word of God. So when God speaks, it's Jesus, right? That's the picture that John's giving us. Then you get Hebrews. It says that he upholds the universe by the word of his power, right?
Right.
So what Jesus says upholds the universe. So if he says everything's done, over, plume, it all ends, right? This is intentional. This is intentional language. Okay, now let's go to a very popular scene and let's look closely at what happens. I feel like sometimes people miss this part. All right, let's look at this. Genesis 3:1. All right, this is where Satan first shows up on the scene. And here's what he says to Eve. Listen to what he says. Now the serpent was more crafty than any other beast of the field the Lord God had made. He said to the woman, did God actually say you shall not eat any tree in the garden? Okay, now many of us know that he tempted Eve to sin and Eve bit the fruit, right? We understand that, and Adam bit. We understand that. But if you look closely at how he tempts Eve, notice that Satan doesn't say, hey, you should eat from the tree in the garden because the fruit looks incredible. And if you eat it, you will be like God, right? That's not what he says. What he says is, did God actually say? Right? So look at what Satan is attacking. The word of God. Satan is attacking God's word. He doesn't say, hey, you should bite that fruit. Aren't you hungry? You look like you could eat, man. That fruit will do wonders for your skin. But that's not what he says. What he says is, did God actually say, you shall not eat any tree in the garden? So the first thing he attacks is the word of God, right? Now, if we think about Genesis 1 and 2, everything, let there be light, let there be water, let the expanse of the water separate, let there be land, let there be creeping things all over the earth, let us make man in our own image. And God just saw everything and said it was good. So all the things that God put in motion that are good all come to fruition by words, by the word. Satan's first attack of God in tempting Eve is, I'm going to attack his word, because words are the fundamental distinction between God and those made in the image of God that animals don't have and other creation doesn't have the ability to use words. That's one of the ways that we're like God. Jesus is the word, so we communicate through words. This is an important reality. Let's fast forward one more place, and then we bring it home. You get down to Genesis 11, Tower of Babel, right? Think about this for a second. Me and Strack were talking about this earlier. Think about this. God looks down, sees humanity. He says they have they're one voice, they have one mind, and because they can all communicate. The power of the word was so significant that God himself said, man, these people, what they want to do will not be impossible for them because they have the same mind and they have the same language. They are unified in the words that they speak and understand. So here's what he says. Here's what it says. Come, let us go down and confuse their language so that they may not understand one another's speech. So the Lord dispersed them from over the face of all the earth, and they left. And then it says, and they left they left off building the city. Therefore, its name was called Babel, because the Lord confused the language of all the earth. And from there, the Lord dispersed them all over the face of all. And from there, the Lord dispersed them all over the. Okay, look. So here's the reality. If we stop and think about who God is and what God could do. Me and Strack were talking about this earlier. We were joking. God could have given all these people like crazy visions, right? And one night he could have had all these people have these visions of monsters or visions of other people harming them, and they go their own separate way. But he didn't. He decided these people, as long as they have the unifying word, unifying a way to communicate, nothing's going to be impossible for them. So out of all the things God could have done to disperse the people, right? He confuses the language. He confuses their ability to understand words. So people who were best friends the day before woke up and now can't understand each other. So now they go with whoever they understand and they move away from wherever they are. They don't stay together. They establish themselves in different parts of the world, and therefore they obey God's command to be fruitful and multiply the earth, right? So this idea of words is significantly important in the Bible. One, it's a moniker of who Jesus is. Two, he upholds the universe by the word of his power. We see three, Satan, the first thing he attacks is the word of God. Okay, all these things God put in motion. The cognitive ability for human beings to understand and communicate through language. God shows his dominance by confusing the languages. And then when we get to the book of Acts and Pentecost, he brings it all back together through the gift of tongues under one unifying word. What? The word of God, Jesus.
Right. I think also one of the elements that's important about words, because there's other forms of communication, like whales communicate, dolphins communicate, animals communicate. But words, like, there's different ways to transmit words. Like we as humans, we communicate words by writing. So we write words, we record words. Mm-hmm. So words don't just affect the communicators themselves, but words affect lineages. Words affect generations. That's why we're able to know who God is through his word, because it's been here for so long and he's
100%.
Preserved his word. You know what I'm saying? So
yes.
So the preservation of communication through word form is important. So when you start to tear down the preservation of words and communication, societies will crumble because of it. That's what Babel did. That's what the Lord did at Babel. Society crumbled because the word was taken away.
100%. That's real. And so when we think about, so why are we saying all this, me and Strack? Because when we think about what's happening in our culture, if you're a believer, if you're not a believer, thank you for watching. And I would love to chat with you about what it means to be a believer. You can comment in the comment section. I'll give you my email. Would love to rap with you about why we believe what we believe. We're glad that you're watching or listening on a podcast if you're not a believer.
The message of the cross is the power of God unto those who are being saved.
Yeah, we would it. We'd love to talk with you. We'd love to. But if you are a believer currently, then you have to realize that this attack on words is not just trying to eliminate harmful language. Satan is all the pronouns. Satan is after the way that God has established societies to work. See, we always talk about the nuclear family, right? And that's one portion of it. The nuclear family establishes people in the society, but words or some form of communication. Because I'm saying you can be deaf and not be able to, but there's sign language. They still communicate with words. They just don't do it orally, right? So while the nuclear family may populate areas, it's the communication that adds wisdom and knowledge and explains to you.
And
if
identity.
you don't have, even animals, they communicate. They just don't formulate words the way we do because we're made in the image of God. If
That's why
you
they
take
can't identify or self-identify the way that we do.
100%,
And that's what words help us do.
they do. And so when you start attacking words and our ability to even discern what is truth, because a lot of what we know is true is based on what is communicated and what we communicate. If you are able to attack words and that we are confused in the language that we use and we don't know what to say because we're afraid of offending or saying this or that, then you fundamentally what Satan is trying to do is basically create a new Babel where God confused the language. Satan is doing the same thing. Let me confuse the language. Let me confuse the language and try to show dominance like God by confusing the language. This is not a left woke or the 21st century etymological, transition. This is a satanic reality where the enemy is attacking words because words are power. And by attacking words, particularly words that Christians can use, you're attacking the word. That was his strategy from the beginning. Did God really say?
It's odd how the excuse of someone else's safety or security can be used or upheld as reasoning for destroying reason, destroying society, destroying communication. It's odd because they'll say, like, we gotta destroy these words in order for the sake of preservation, the preservation of a people that are, they need to be cared for and loved. And so we'll destroy these words, all while saying someone like Trump is a totalitarian.
Yeah.
So you're talking about taking out words from a community or from a university in a totalitarian format, but you're complaining about the guy who you hated as president.
Right.
You're doing the same thing, but you're doing it under the guise of the preservation of a people group, or people that you might deem as less than, or maybe they need to just be cared for, whatever.
Bro, I mean, I'm with you, and I think this is what we're seeing is it's a form of spiritual warfare, I think, and I think we just have to be careful that we're not so caught up in the surface level, flesh and blood sort of craziness of this, that we don't realize like what's really happening. Like, why are words being attacked? Why is male and female, those distinctions, being attacked? Like, these are all things that God created from the beginning and gave to humanity. Remember, creation, marriage, male, these aren't Christian ordinances. They're creation ordinances. It's not something that's only applicable to believers. Yeah. All human beings are made in God's image. Now, what's applicable to believers is that we're children of God. All people are not children of God. But all people are made in God's image. All people have the means, unless there's some, mental, chemical, mental deficiency that makes, but everyone will communicate in some way, shape, or form.
This is like no bullying taken to an irrational conclusion.
Bro, 100%, fam. Like super irrational. Like,
yeah.
But it appears as an angel of light. It appears like let's eliminate harmful initiatives by imposing a particular set of rules, words that you can and cannot use.
I mean, can you imagine back in the day in junior high when the whole no bullying thing started and they like peer mediation? Remember peer mediators and all that stuff? Imagine if what they would have done instead of incorporating peer mediation and council sessions and all that. Imagine if they would have just said, "Well, you guys aren't allowed to talk to each other anymore because you're just bullying each other. So no more talking to each other. Everyone has to be just isolated in their own areas." I mean, that's it's like the extreme of what we're seeing right now. You know, it's like nobody's allowed to wear regular clothes anymore because people are getting bullied for wearing whack clothes. So everybody has to wear uniforms now. You know, like that same type of mentality. I mean, it's odd.
You know, it's funny. I was just thinking as you were talking, my generation, here's my generation. Sticks and stones may break my bones, but names will never hurt me.
Yeah, I remember that being said. Yeah,
that's my generation. This generation, your words are like sticks and stones that I need safety from.
For sure.
You know what I'm saying? Like, it's totally different. We're like, now, these words are so harmful, where at one point, it was like, all right, we just got
yeah, we used to say, like, bubble gum, I'm bubble gum, you're glue. You know,
whatever you say sticks to me, doesn't stick to me, sticks to you.
You.
Right,
yeah,
all of that.
Like,
it's like we understood that words only affect you if you let them, and you got to keep moving. But now you're trying to eliminate words, which on one level I appreciate, right? I get the sentiment, but what's happening is something much deeper, because what you're doing is now you're taking by personalizing language, right? By personalizing language, you're if Jesus is the word, right? And by the universe is upheld by the power of his word, right? So that's the one unifying word that controls and rules everything, right? If I begin to personalize language and change, and people have to conform to the personal preferential change that I desire, right? Then by default, I become a quasi God. I become God in a quasi sense where, like, I can determine, I'm confusing the language like God did and making people submit to that and have to deal with that. And then once you can control people by the language, then you can control a lot of things.
For sure.
Listen, most people are not going to be, most people's American dream will not be the economical. It will not be where you'll become a millionaire. So your slice of the American dream will become what you can control in your world, your sphere.
What you can make happen.
Right. And so as you start using language and changing the language that everyone's used to fit your personal preferential needs, then by default, you place yourself above millions of other people.
That's right.
And you want millions of other people to say, yeah, we're going to follow you and listen to you. This is the problem. This is what I mean. So it is a ridiculous, insidious idolatry of self. It is the height of arrogance to say, I can confuse the language and control how people think and what they do. Because again, if you confuse the language, you affect what I'm able to do. So if if I can't say, hey, my man, can you watch out? It's like, no, I identify as a woman, okay, then I'm not allowed to call you that. Or I can't say this because, yeah. The reason why, I don't know how many of you heard of the Mishnah, right? The Mishnah was this religious document with 612 rules that the Pharisees made up for what you couldn't do on the Sabbath. This thing was massive. And people constantly broke the Sabbath because they couldn't remember all the rules. This is why Jesus said to them, you say, don't do anything on the Sabbath, but if your sheep falls into a pit, then you'll get it out on the Sabbath. He said, you guys are hypocrites. You're telling people you're burdening people with all these rules, and you don't lift a finger to apply any of them, right? You guys are hypocrites. So there was twofold Jesus' issue. One, you're a hypocrite. You're telling people to do something you're not doing. Two, you're creating all these rules and equating them to the traditions of Moses, right? This is what's happening in a similar sense. You're creating all these rules of language, rules that we're just not going to remember. Now, granted, the generations that are behind my children and so forth, your kids, your grandkid, they may end up learning this new way of communicating because they're going to grow up in a world potentially that's stressing that. But for the majority of us, you can control what I do. And honestly, you can start to go insane mentally. Sorry, Stanford, I'm going to use that term. Because you can start to lose your grip on reality if you don't understand what words, what definition, what do these things mean anymore, you'll start to lose your grip on reality. It's crazy. This is what's going to happen. You're trying to create a society where I can change and this is the thing. This is why I don't think it's ever going to catch on. You can change your pronouns or whatever whenever you want. So one day you'll call me they, them. The next day it's zim, zer, zat, zik. Right? You can just continue to change it. So once I got used to what you did say, now I have to relearn what you did. And it becomes confusing. So then guess what? I don't even want to talk anymore. I don't want to talk to people anymore. I'm just going to do what I'm told. This is what I'm saying. This is what you do. Yeah. This is where it's headed. I don't even want to talk anymore because I don't want to offend anyone. I don't know what to say. I'm just going to keep my mouth shut. And if I keep my mouth shut, then I'm just going to do what I'm told. If I do what I'm told, then I just become a pawn in society. And biblically speaking, I don't say anything. I don't object. And all of a sudden, I'm getting the mark of the beast just so I can buy and eat food.
Well, the reality is, too, though, that the problem has to be big enough for me to want a solution.
Right.
So simple, like, here's an example, electric cars. When gas prices went through the roof is when everybody started thinking about electric cars. And electric cars started selling off the charts. You know what I'm saying? And dealers started making electric cars because it made sense for them to do so.
Right.
But, when you talk about this language issue, the reason it's not going to catch on is because it's not playing out in our average homes.
Yeah.
I mean, like, my grandkids aren't hearing these pronouns on a regular basis. They're not going to schools where they're hearing these pronouns on a regular basis. They're not in church where they're hearing. It's just not on a regular basis type of deal. So it really falls down to us in our households. What are we doing with this? Are we taking a Stanford document and saying, yo, I'm going to apply this to my home now? Or are we looking at the Stanford document and saying, this is just reflective of how bad our society can be if we stop thinking logically?
Mm-hmm. Well, the challenge is there's a bunch of people that are going, so there's a generation of younger people that are trying to make this normal.
Run with it, for sure.
They're trying to normalize it. So for some people, there will be some semblance of normalization where this is sort of the world that they're in, this revolving world. And what it is essentially...
It's a small world.
It's a small world right now, but here's where it becomes big. If corporate America, at least in America, we are driven by corporate interests, right? Things that corporate America wasn't cool with 10 years ago, they'll go with if this is what will make them money because society is changing. This is the underlying thing that we don't talk about as often. It's not politics. Politics move our nation on one level. Morality rules the world. Even the richest people have to submit to rules and laws, right? But what rich people do is they shape the laws. They shape the morality. So this is why you get a lot of lobbyists. Like $3.7 billion from corporate America goes to politicians and lobbyists so that they can pass laws, corporate tax cuts, and all the things that they get are not written in some kind of institutional 10 commandments. They're the laws that politicians make because these people, these corporations are paying for them. So if corporate America, which it's starting to, if corporate America latches on to this idea because they think this is where it's headed and we're trying to make money in this new sort of world order, so we need to act accordingly, and they start promoting it in a certain way, that's where we're going to get to, depending on how you define the mark of the beast. Think about what that says. Let's just say that that's a literal thing and it's not a symbolic. If the mark of the beast is a literal illustration of what's going to happen at some point in society, then that's a corporate America decision. Corporate America will not let you buy anything, including even basic necessities like groceries, unless you show that you agree with the mindset of the beast, which was an anti-Christian sentiment. That's going to be a corporate America-induced reality. I'm saying that if you're processing the mark of the beast as a literal thing that will happen. But that's how it's going to happen. It's going to come through that. So I agree that it's a small percentage of people now. And I think seeing what's happening to Disney is encouraging. That Disney stock is at its lowest in 50 years. Why Disney? Because you're trying to push a sexual agenda that the majority of people do not want their kids to have to experience. They do not want their kids to be forced to see certain images, accept certain things, all of it. Marvel said that they were not happy with what happened in Phase 4, and they're going to reboot. You know why? Because in Phase 4, Marvel put out some of the dumbest shows that were trying to be all-inclusive of all things, and you lost the thing that made you the most attractive to people. People do not want to see the sexuality of their superheroes. They want to see them fight supervillains with great CGI and all of it.
Right.
So on one level, what's happening with Disney, what's happening with some corporations is encouraging. That side, that wokeness, that if it's I don't call it a left ideology because I agree with the left. I can't stand the left. I don't call it that because I think it's deeper than the left. And I want to make sure that I don't get confused and use the language of politics, theological instead of theological. But what's happening, so I think there's a good chance that if corporate America catches on to it and finds a way to market it to make money for it, they're going to do it. And that's going to affect the rest of us. And then you got celebrities, that's a whole different conversation. But yeah, I think it's a low point right now, but man, I tell you what, if you'd have told me, I would have said I see it because of the way I am. But I'll just, for the sake of analogy, if you'd have told me in 2000, now let's say 1995, when I was like really in the streets hard, if you'd have told me in 1995 that in 20 years there would be like transgender, which back then I would have called like a transvestite or transsexual or whatever. I would have called them transvestite. Yeah, transvestite was the term. If you would have told me back then that they would be a dominant people group, that laws are being passed in favor of them and to protect them, even over people who don't see that as something that's not a part of the DSM handbook, I would have said, nah, fam, there's no way culture's going to do that.
I mean, I definitely wouldn't have thought that we would have them, parading around the White House and taking photographs during the balls.
100%.
I definitely wouldn't have
and being in libraries reading to kids.
Definitely wouldn't have said that either.
So see what I'm saying? So on one level, I think the best thing we can do is be aware of what's really going on. This is what we try to do on Cross-Examine. Our goal on Cross-Examine, listen, we would love to have more people following us. We think we offer helpful things for people to consider. Many of you say that, and we're grateful. People say that about what I put when I'm just doing a Kurt's Corner. Grateful. But what we're really trying to do, if we don't grow this channel and do anything else, then the people who do listen, whether you're listening on podcasts or watching YouTube, what we care about, if you're a believer, is that you use the right lenses to evaluate culture. Don't look at the politics and think the left or the right or this. Yeah, those things are true, but they're as true as the material world is. But there's a spiritual world that created the material world. Right? So there's a spiritual world that God created that's more real than the real world, and we go there when we leave here. So we need to be thinking like, okay, as best as I can, let me evaluate the world through spiritual lenses and not just material lenses, which for many of us would be political, sociological, sort of economical lenses. This deeper than that. This attack on words is not in any way, shape, or form about eliminating harmful language. While I think that's what they think because Satan appears as an angel of light, it's deeper than that. By confusing the language, the enemy is attacking the word the same way he did in Genesis 3 when he said, did God really say? He attacks the word of God. He attacks Jesus. If you are the Son of God, God just said in Matthew 3, this is my son with whom I'm well pleased, listen to him. You don't think Satan was there and heard that? You think Satan is away from wherever God and Jesus are? I don't think so. And I can't prove. The Bible doesn't say Satan was there. I think Satan was there when Jesus was baptized, heard God say, this is my son whom I'm pleased. That was the identifying marker. God said it so that everyone could hear that. They didn't say
that's I mean, if the demons knew who he was, I'm 100%. Sure Satan knew who he was. Mm-hmm. And knowing who he was, he would have wanted to be around him. I mean,
to see what he's doing.
Yeah,
because he'd been waiting. He'd been waiting for this dude. The powers of darkness was waiting for Jesus from Genesis 3:15. When God said this woman will give birth to a seed and he will crush your head, they don't think they weren't waiting for Jesus, wondering who he was the whole time.
Right.
Why you think they were killing kids when Herod found out that the child was born? Herod sent people to go kill him.
Right.
So the angel woke Joseph up and said, "Go to Egypt." Like the powers of darkness,
even with Moses.
right? The powers of darkness were trying to kill kids. They didn't know when it was coming. So I think Satan was there when he knew that Jesus was the Son of God, and he knew that was audibly communicated. And he said, "If you are the Son of God," he's always attacking the Word of God. So he's attacking words, and God created us to have, understand, and use words. And this is what will happen in society. So take it serious, brothers and sisters. We don't need to be afraid, but we need to be aware, right? I ain't talking about living in fear. I'm talking about living aware. Like, oh, okay, this is what's up. This is what's popping. This is what's really going on right now. Like I see it. I don't always know what to do about it, but I see it. And so I'm gonna tell the people that I know and love, hey, pay attention. Pay attention. And this is what we do. Strike and I do this because we love you guys. Even if we don't know you, if you're a believer, then we love you because we believe the same things. That's right. And so we're going to say what we can to try to get you guys to see what we think we're seeing. And if it's helpful, may God use it. If it's not, then forget about it. You can do whatever you want with it. So,
yes, sir.
Crazy stuff, man. Crazy stuff right now. Crazy.
Don't say crazy, man.
Oh, I'm not allowed. Surprising. Was that the right one?
Ludicrous.
Yeah, it's ludicrous. No, because you're going to offend the rapper who used it. You know what I'm saying?
Okay.
They can just keep going, fam. But truth be told, that's Stanford, right? Stanford. That's not law. That's not law. It's Stanford. So I'm just peeking at the chat, man. I got to be honest. I'm Monkey King. I don't know who you are, but I don't understand this conversation at all. What's going on in the chat, bro? Monkey King, man, I'm glad you're here. Thanks for watching. I don't know who you are, the Monkey King, but your chat looks like you on shrooms, fam. I have no idea maybe I'm just not following it. But every time I look, I do not understand what is being communicated by the Monkey King. I think the Monkey King is eating gorilla shrooms right now and is on one. You are on one, bro. No, I'm just messing with you, man. That's what I do. But I'm also not messing with you. I honestly have no idea what you're talking about. So anyway, man, we appreciate y'all. Thanks for watching. If you like and subscribe to the channel, man, we're trying to get to Y2K. We're just under about 1950 plus subscribers. We're trying to get to 2,000. We get to 2,000. We're going to ramp it up a little bit, step our game up, all that. So thanks for watching. Thanks for being a part of it. Don't forget, man, to check out, you know the vibes. You know the vibes. You can check us out on Twitter. Probably more Strike than me at this point.
I'm a once in a whiler. So.
Yeah, I'm a once in a whiler too now, man. It's just mammified. I just checked to see if it still works with Elon Musk doing crazy stuff. You know the real reason why? Well, never mind. That's a different conversation. So hit us on Twitter, and then don't forget to go to Abner's Brush. Check out the brush. Listen, this is I think you should do this year, 2023. Let me challenge you to do this. As a photographer, I take a lot of pictures. And I do a lot of portrait work, and I love it. I love to take pictures of people. You can go to kurtkennedy.com and look at
amazing photography.
Yeah, you'll see me do some photography. Like I'm not a photographer, but I do play one on television, right? So, but one of the things that I've always appreciated was taking a picture and then having someone. I've always wanted it ever since I saw Scarface, and he had this portrait of him and Elvira, and them in the background. I was like, I'm gonna get that one day. I didn't know when, but I was like, I'm gonna get that with me and my wife, whatever, my woman. I've loved that. I forgot about it because I never met anybody who could do that. But now that I know Strack, this is something for me in 2023 I want to get done because it's something different. I think we're all good at pictures. You can take pictures with your phone, you can post them. But when can you honestly say I've had someone paint the portrait of our family and that's hanging on my wall? That's something different. I'm saying all this to say, if you go to abnersbrush.com, right, you'll see some artwork, and I think you should in 2023 step your game up, jump out there, contact them, get a portrait of your family. That joint's gonna be crazy. People gonna come in your house and be like, bro, Where'd you get that from? Sis, look, go girl, all that, whatever it is, you're gonna get all that, right? Because people don't have it. I think it's unique when you go in and see a really good painting of a portrait of people like, whoa, it's gonna shock people. I think 2023, make it your aim, go to abnersbrush.com. All right.
Thank you, brother.
Last infomercial. Because we do this, people know that I'm a pastor and I do this. I do a lot of videos. Don't forget who we also are. We also make music.
Yes, sir.
We also paint. So we got some new music coming out. Support the family. Support your homies, right? We do a lot of things. We communicate the same truth in different form.
That's right.
So with podcasts, it's just straight, no chaser. But then we also communicate truth through music. So don't forget that we do music as well. Continue to support. Go to kurtkennedy.com. Get that stuff. Go to abnersbrush.com.
Yes.
And we'd love to have you participate. Thank you so much for your participation, for following, for being in the chat, comment section. Monkey King, just so you know, I was just playing with you, sort of. I just am not understanding.
He said he's on that living water, man.
Man, he's on that living water. All right, so this is abnersbrush.com. Go there in 2023. Make it your aim to do that. Holler at me on kurtkennedy.com. All right. You can find everything there. All my stuff is there. Music, photography, links to different places. Hit me as well. I come in there, flick up the family, do it nice. I shot you.
Blinky, blinky.
All that. All right. Having said that, I'm Kurt Kennedy. He's Track the Wolverine.
Come on already.
And we are out of here, y'all. Grace and peace.